I'm 19, just started college, and already I've got the weirdest story that I don't even know how to explain without sounding paranoid. My parents divorced when I was 16. It wasn't messy, but it wasn't great either. My mom moved across the state for work, and I stayed with my dad because my school, friends, everything was here. I love my mom, and we're close, but she and my dad were just not a good match, so I stayed behind. Anyway, fast forward a bit. Around my senior year of high school, Dad started dating again. At first, it was casual. He'd mention dates, I'd nod along, I didn't really care. Then he met her. Melanie. He fell hard. Within 6 months, they were engaged. By the time I graduated, she had moved in. At first, Melanie seemed, okay, a little fake, if I'm honest. Too smiley, too interested in what I was doing, like she was trying too hard. But whatever. I figured she wanted to make a good impression, and Dad was happy, so I tried to be polite. It wasn't until I came home for the summer after my first year at college that things started to feel off. For starters, she kept calling me by my mom's name. At first, I thought it was a slip-up. They don't even look. We don't have the same name, and Melanie never met my mom. But she'd say things like, "Can you grab that, Lisa?" When my name is not Lisa. She'd catch herself and laugh it off. "Oh my God, sorry. I have a coworker named Lisa. Must be stuck in my head." But it kept happening. The weird part? Lisa is my mom's name, but there's no way Melanie would know that. My dad doesn't talk about her, and there are no pictures or keepsakes around the house. They've been divorced for years, and he's private about it. I didn't correct her the first few times. Then one day I said, "Hey, by the way, Lisa's not my name." She just smiled and, "Oh, I know, too." Something made my stomach. That's when the little things started piling up. She accidentally locked me out of the house twice when I came home from work late. She forgot to pass on messages from my dad. One morning I came down for breakfast and found my favorite coffee mug smashed in the trash, like someone had stomped on it. But it wasn't until I came home early from work one afternoon and found her locked inside my bedroom that I knew something was seriously wrong. I didn't even know she was home. And what she said when I knocked, that's what still keeps me up at night. So when I got home that afternoon, the house was weirdly quiet. My dad was working a double shift, and Melanie's car wasn't in the driveway, so I thought I had the place to myself. I was honestly kind of relieved. Being around her had started to make my skin crawl. I went upstairs, and as I got closer to my room, I noticed the door was closed, which I never do. I leave it open on purpose. Just habit. Then I saw the light under the door, and then I heard movement. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe my dad was home early and borrowing something. I called out and got no answer. I walked over, knocked, and waited. The door was locked. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, sorry, I'll be out in a second." She didn't sound surprised or embarrassed or even apologetic. Just casual, like she had every right to be there. I stood there, staring at the door. "Why are you in my room?" There was a pause, a long one. Then she opened the door slowly, smiling, like nothing was weird. She was holding a framed photo of me and my mom, the one I keep tucked behind a couple of books on my shelf. It wasn't even visible unless you knew where to look. She handed it to me and said, "I was just looking for memories." I didn't know what to say. I took the photo and stared at her like she had grown another head. Who even says that? I asked her straight up what she was doing, and she brushed it off. Said she was just tidying and thought she saw something fall behind my dresser, which was a lie, because the photo was behind my bookshelf, and that's not somewhere she should have even been looking. Then she said, "You're so much like her, you know, the way you walk, the way you tilt your head when you're confused. You even have the same scent." My blood ran cold. I hadn't told her my mom's name, hadn't mentioned her at all, but Melanie looked at me like she knew her, like she'd met her, like she'd watched her. I went into full lockdown mode after that, locked my room every time I left. Took that photo and stuffed it in my backpack. I even started keeping my essentials in the car, just in case. I didn't tell my dad right away. I wanted to, but he was so in it with her. He had this goofy look on his face every time she entered the room, like she'd hypnotized him. But that wasn't even the weirdest part, because the next night I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Soft, deliberate, like someone was trying not to be heard. And then I saw the shadow under my door. It just stood there, not moving, not going away, just watching. That shadow outside my door stood there for at least 2 minutes. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just laid there, frozen, under my blanket like a kid afraid of monsters. Except this wasn't a monster. This was a woman who lived in my house. Eventually, the shadow disappeared. I didn't hear footsteps walk away, which made it even worse. Just gone, like she floated off. I waited, maybe 20 minutes. Then I got up, grabbed my baseball bat from under the bed, crept to the door, and cracked it open just enough to peek out. Empty hallway, but I wasn't imagining. I know someone was there. I could feel it. You ever just know you're being watched? That's what it felt like. Electric under the skin. My heart still hadn't calmed down when I turned to go back, and that's when I heard the creak. Not from the hallway, from inside my room. I nearly dropped the bat. I stood there for what felt like forever, just staring at my closet door. It was closed, but I swear it had moved. Just slightly. The kind of movement that wouldn't register unless you were looking right at it. I did nothing. I didn't open it. I didn't move. I just turned on my lamp, sat on the edge of my bed, and stayed up for the rest of the night. I stared at that closet until the sun came up. In the morning, when I finally opened it, nothing. Of course, just clothes, boxes, the usual junk. But something was off. The smell. My closet had always smelled like old fabric and lavender from the sachets my mom used to give me. But now, it smelled like Melanie's perfume. Sweet, powdery, and strong. That day, I told my dad I was thinking of getting a summer job out of town. He barely glanced up from his laptop and said, "That's great, kiddo. Independence." He had no idea I was already looking at storage units and checking local motels. I didn't feel safe in my own house anymore. Not because of anything physical. Melanie hadn't touched me, hadn't threatened me. But that made it worse. It was all just weird enough that I couldn't prove anything. She wasn't breaking any laws. She was just there, watching, smiling, smelling like my mother. But then, 2 days later, I came home and found something on my bed that made my blood run cold. A scarf. One I hadn't seen in years. One that used to belong to my mom. And there's no way Melanie could have had it, because it was buried with her. When I say I froze, I mean I physically couldn't move. I just stood there at the doorway, staring at my bed like it was a crime scene. The scarf was folded neatly, perfectly, placed dead center on my comforter, like it was waiting for me. Now here's the thing. My mom had this scarf for years. It was vintage, hand-stitched, dark green with these tiny gold threads woven through. She wore it every winter, and it was her favorite. When she passed away unexpectedly last year, an aneurysm, no warning, no goodbyes, I remember laying that exact scarf in her casket during the viewing. It felt symbolic, like a final gift. No one else saw it go in except me, the funeral director, and my uncle, who stood beside me as I tucked it under her folded hands. So to walk into my bedroom and see it again, the same wear, same faded embroidery, same tiny coffee stain near the corner, it felt like the world tilted sideways. I walked up to it slowly, terrified to touch it. I stared for a full minute before finally picking it up. Same weight, same smell, same scarf. I sat down hard, scarf clutched in my lap, trying to breathe, and then it hit me. There were only 2 explanations. This wasn't really the same scarf. It just looked like maybe a copy, maybe something similar Melanie found and thought was a sweet, motherly gesture. Or it was the same scarf, and if it was, then someone opened my mother's casket, or it was never buried with her at all. I wanted to call my uncle, ask him if there was any chance we'd forgotten something. Maybe the funeral director hadn't put it in after all, but I was too afraid of what he'd say. I wasn't ready to hear. No, I saw it with my own eyes. So I did something else. I went downstairs. Melanie was in the kitchen, humming, pouring tea like we were in some cozy Hallmark movie. She looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong, asked if I wanted a cup. I said no. I just held up the scarf and asked her where she got it. She looked at it, blinked once, then smiled wider. "Oh, I found that in the attic. It must have been your mom's. I thought it might comfort you." I stared at her, waiting for a flicker of guilt, a crack in the mask. Nothing. My mom never lived in this house. She and my dad split before he moved here. There's no way anything of hers would be in the attic, especially not this. I nodded slowly, said thanks, took the scarf and went back to and started planning. Because I couldn't prove anything yet. But I was going to find out exactly who Melanie was, and I wasn't going to do it alone. I knew I couldn't take this to my dad. Not yet. He was too far gone, totally under Melanie's spell. If I came to him saying she was digging through closets, sneaking into my room at night, and possibly unearthing buried clothes, he'd chalk it up to stress, maybe even suggest therapy. So I called someone else. My mom's sister, Aunt Marie. She lives a few towns over and we talk occasionally, mostly around holidays. I told her I needed help with something personal, and she agreed to meet me for coffee the next day. When we sat down, I didn't launch into the whole story. I just asked her one question. "Do you remember if Mom's scarf made it into the casket?" Marie blinked, tilted her head, said yes. She remembered it clearly, said she thought it was sweet that I'd added it during the viewing. I nodded like it was no big deal and changed the subject, but now I knew. It had been in the casket. There was no logical way it could be on my bed. Unless I went home that night, scarf tucked in my backpack, and started digging. I didn't know what I was looking for. Melanie's online footprint was practically non-existent. No real social media, just a couple old Facebook photos and a LinkedIn account with one job listing from 5 years ago. But something about her never sat right. I had this gut feeling that I wasn't the first person she'd done this to, so I started small. I searched her name in the obituaries. Nothing. Then I got more creative. I searched funeral registries. Sometimes when people attend services, their names are recorded if they sign the guest book, and there it was. My heart stopped. Melanie A. Clark. Signed into my mother's funeral. I stared at it for a long time. The signature wasn't even hidden. It was a few pages in, among names I recognized. Co-workers, neighbors, a couple people from Mom's old church group, and Melanie. I never saw her there. Neither did my aunt. Neither did my uncle. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't stand in line to offer condolences. She just came, signed her name, and left, like she needed to confirm something. I didn't sleep that night. The scarf sat on my desk like a cursed object. Every time I glanced at it, I felt this tight, sick pressure behind my ribs. Because if Melanie had been at the funeral, then she knew my mom. And if she knew my mom, why the hell was she married to my dad? The next morning, I skipped class. I couldn't sit in a lecture pretending everything was normal. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think straight. My brain was on fire, racing through questions I had no answers to. Why would she come to my mom's funeral? Why lie about the scarf? Why lock herself in my room, call me by my mom's name, watch me at night? Unless this wasn't random. Unless I wasn't just unlucky. So I called the library in the town where my parents went to high school and asked if they had yearbooks from the early 90s. They did. I told them I was coming in. I drove over, stomach twisting, and sat in a dusty corner with a stack of books. My dad graduated in '94. My mom, the year before. I flipped through the pages one by one, looking for something, anything. And then I found her. Melanie Ann Clark, class of '94. Same year as my dad. Same high school. Same yearbook photo. Only she looked completely different. Big hair, glasses, braces, and this stiff, uncomfortable smile, like she wasn't used to being seen. I flipped to the back where all the candid photos were, and that's when my stomach dropped. There she was again, not just in the background, but staring, full-on staring, at my dad. One photo showed him sitting at a lunch table, laughing with friends. Melanie was across the cafeteria, in the far corner, looking directly. Another picture outside during a school event captured her standing a few feet, again, eyes locked on. It was like finding a stalker in every single frame, always watching, always near. My hands started shaking. Melanie wasn't just some random woman my dad met on a dating app. She'd known him for decades, and now she was living in our house, married to him, slipping into my mom's shadow, piece by piece. I took photos of everything, and then I called my aunt again, told her everything, every single detail I'd been holding back. She didn't hesitate. "Get out of that house," she said. "Today." But I couldn't. Not yet. Not without knowing one more thing. Because if Melanie had known my mom too, what happened between them? After I got off the phone with my aunt, I drove straight to her place. I didn't even pack a bag. I just grabbed my wallet, my phone, and the yearbook with Melanie's picture bookmarked. I couldn't spend another night under the same roof as her. Not after what I saw. Not after knowing she'd been watching my dad since high school. Marie didn't even ask questions when I showed up. She just pulled me into a hug and sat me down at her kitchen table. I placed the yearbook in front of her, flipped to Melanie's page and said, "Do you recognize her?" She stared for a while, tilted her head. Then her eyes widened like a switch had flipped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's her." And just like that, the rest came tumbling out. Melanie had gone by a different last name in high school, her maiden name, but Marie remembered her. She wasn't friends with my mom, but she knew her. Everyone did. My mom was homecoming queen, cheer captain, popular in that low-key, warm, everyone-likes-you kind of way. Melanie wasn't any of those things. She was invisible, until she wasn't. One day, according to Marie, there was an incident. Something weird. Something people didn't talk about openly, but that everyone remembered. Someone had broken into my mom's locker. Nothing stolen, but everything rearranged. Her photos were moved, her books flipped backward, her perfume bottle, half empty. A note was left behind. A note that said, "I know everything about you. I can be you if I want." They never found out who did it. But a week later, someone else, Marie wouldn't say who, caught a girl standing outside the Richardson house late at night. My mom's childhood home, just standing, staring up at the window, watching. Marie said she wasn't sure if it was Melanie back then, but now that she saw the yearbook photo, it all clicked. The same eyes, the same look, like she was always trying to memorize someone else's life. And here's the part that chilled me. After that incident, my mom became different, quieter, more cautious. She started locking her bedroom door, switched schools halfway through senior year. No one really knew why. She stopped talking about it completely, even with her own sister. Now it makes sense. She was being watched, followed, imitated. Marie looked at me, eyes glassy, and said, "I think your mom knew. I think she always knew Melanie was out there. And maybe, just maybe, that's why she never moved back home. Why she left my dad behind when they divorced. Why she ran, because she thought she'd escaped her. But now, Melanie was back, and she wasn't just watching any. She was inside our family, living in my mom's house, married to my dad, calling me by her name. After everything my aunt told me, I couldn't stop shaking. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melanie's face. Not how she looked when she smiled at my dad, but the way she stared through that yearbook, focused, hungry. I spent 2 days at my aunt's place before deciding to go back. I told her it was just to grab a few things, clothes, my laptop, some important stuff from my desk, but the truth was, I needed answers. I needed to see her again, to look her in the face knowing everything I knew, to see if she'd crack, if she'd slip, if the weirdness would finally snap into something real. So I timed it carefully, waited until I knew Melanie would be home alone. My dad was at work. I made sure of it. I even called the front office to speak to him about something, just to be sure he was on shift. Then I drove over. Melanie opened the door like she'd been expecting me, smiled wide, like nothing was wrong, like we hadn't silently declared war on each other without saying a single word. "Back so soon?" she said. I didn't answer, just told her I needed to grab a few things. She hovered while I packed, offered to help. I said no. She kept standing in the doorway, watching me fold clothes into my bag like she was memorizing the process. Then she said it again. "You know, Lisa, you used to fold your shirts the exact same way." I turned around slowly. "My name isn't Lisa." She tilted her head. "Of course it isn't." I zipped the bag and walked past her without another word, but I didn't head straight for the front door. I had one more stop, the attic. She froze when I reached the stairs, asked me what I was doing. I lied, said I thought I left a box of textbooks up there. She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll help you look." We climbed up, and I kept my breathing steady. The attic is barely more than a crawl space with one of those pull-down ladders. Hot, dry, dusty. Nothing but old boxes and insulation. My dad never used it. Said it creeped him out. But Melanie? Melanie had moved in up there. There were candles in one corner, half burned, a chair, a stack of notebooks, one of my mom's old coats that had disappeared years ago. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the wall. She'd pinned photos to it. Dozens. Every single one of my mother. Old yearbook prints, newspaper clippings, Facebook screenshots, even a few that looked like still frames from video. My childhood birthday parties, a picture of my mom in a parking lot. Some of them weren't even ours, just random street photos where my mom was in the background. I couldn't breathe. Melanie saw me looking. She didn't even flinch. She walked right up beside me, looked at the wall with pride, and said quietly, "I just wanted to remember her. That's all." I turned to face her. My hands were shaking. I opened my mouth to speak, but she beat me to it. "You know," she whispered, "I loved her first." I stood there in that suffocating attic, surrounded by old insulation and flickering candlelight, staring at this shrine of my dead mother. Melanie was so calm, too calm. She didn't even look at me, just kept her eyes on the photos like she was admiring a gallery, like she was remembering something beautiful. I asked her what she meant. She didn't hesitate. Back in high school, Melanie had been obsessed with my mom, not in the innocent fangirl way, but in a dangerous, deep-rooted fixation. My mom was everything she wanted to be. Smart, warm, adored. Melanie said she used to follow her around school, memorize her schedule, sit near her in the library just to listen to her voice. And she didn't just love her. She believed she was meant to become her. Melanie told me the locker incident wasn't the only one. She had tried to befriend my mom. Once. My mom turned her down, gently, politely, said she was busy, said maybe another time. But Melanie took it personally. She believed it meant my mom didn't see her, that she didn't recognize what they could have been. My mom started dating. That's when the obsession snapped into something. Melanie said she watched them together, that she followed them, that she sat outside the Richardson house for hours some nights, just wishing, and then my mom moved away. Melanie never not through college, not through adulthood. She said she tried to find her again and again, until one day, years later, she finally did. Through an obituary, she found the announcement of my mom's sudden passing on. She hadn't even known my mom had a daughter, hadn't realized she had stayed local all those years. But once she found her name, my name, she started watching again. She told me she went to the funeral not to grieve, but to see, to make sure it was real. And when she saw my dad again, it all came flooding back. He was hers, she said softly. So I made him mine. I could barely breathe. She met him online, posed as someone new, played the part perfectly, said all the right things. My dad, lonely and unsuspecting, fell in love with a woman who already knew everything about him. And me? She'd been watching me too, online, quietly, from a distance, until she didn't want distance anymore. She wanted the house, the man, the life, the legacy. She wanted to replace her, and that's exactly what she was doing. Then she turned to me, eyes shining, voice shaking just slightly. "You're all that's left of her now," she said, "and I'm not going to let you ruin this." I stepped back, suddenly aware of how small that attic space really was. My heart was pounding. My legs were ready to bolt, but I had to say something, so I did. I asked her, quietly, what happened to the scarf. How did she get it? She smiled, and that's when I realized she never answered the question. When I left the attic, I didn't scream. I didn't run. I thanked her. I thanked Melanie for sharing her story, told her I was glad we'd cleared the air, and said I needed time to process everything. She smiled, like I was finally understanding her, like I was becoming her. Then I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove away. I didn't go back to my aunt's. I didn't go to a friend's. I drove 5 hours to my mom's hometown, the one she left and never spoke of again. I got a motel, paid in cash, slept with my phone off and a chair propped against the door. The next day I called a lawyer. Then I called my dad. Not to tell him everything. Not yet. I knew he wouldn't believe it. I'd seen the way he looked at her, how easily she had woven herself into his life. He wasn't just in love, he was rewired. So I took a different approach. I told him Melanie had made me uncomfortable, that I didn't want to come back home, that I needed space and would be staying somewhere else. I didn't say why. I didn't bring up the attic, the photos, the scarf, any of it. I needed him to see it himself. The lawyer helped me draft a statement requesting access to my mom's estate box. There were still things in storage under my name. Inside it, the original funeral photo logs, her will, even a letter she'd written to me the week before she passed. I hadn't known it existed. In the letter, she wrote about feeling like someone from her past had resurfaced. She didn't say a name, just that she'd been getting odd messages, seeing familiar faces she couldn't quite place. She had a bad feeling. She said if anything happened to her unexpectedly, she wanted me to stay close to Marie and trust no one from her old life. Her words felt like a final warning, one she didn't get to finish. 2 weeks after I left, I got a call from my dad. He sounded broken. Said he'd found something in the attic he didn't understand. That Melanie had left town, no explanation, just gone. He found the shrine. He said the walls were covered in pictures of my mom, articles, even a few items that had belonged to her years ago, stuff he thought had been donated or lost during the... Then quietly he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I didn't answer. He wouldn't have believed me then. He barely believed it now. Melanie vanished, deleted her social media, left her job, phone disconnected. It was like she dissolved in the air. But sometimes, crowded street, I get that feeling like I'm being watched. Sometimes such a glimpse of a woman in a coat my mom used to wear, a voice in a store that sounds just slightly too familiar. Sometimes a bottle of mom's old windowsill, a copy of her favorite book sitting on a table I didn't put it on, a photo of me and my mom from when I was little, tucked into the mailbox, no return address. I haven't spoken to my dad much since. I think part of him still wonders if I made it all up. Maybe it's easier that way, but I know the truth. Melanie didn't just want my mom's life. She built her world around her memory, and when my mom died, she came for what was left, and I don't think she's done.